Zephan Blacksburg here with the Life Rescripted Virtual Summit, and today I am joined by Lisa Steadman. And Lisa is a relationship expert, best-selling author, writer and producer, media personality, and highly sought-after voice for women who are redefining what having it all looks like. From her best-selling books, including her runaway hit It's a Breakup, Not a Breakdown, to her hilarious and heartfelt blog and Twitter chronicling her confessions of an imposter mom, audiences rave about Lisa's refreshingly real-world take on the ages and relationship stages women find themselves in: single, dating, mating, marriage, motherhood, divorce, and starting over, and how to navigate each with humility and humor. And Lisa, it's such a pleasure to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm so good and I'm so happy to be here. Congratulations on this amazing summit. You are so accomplished for I'm not to sound like an old fart, but for your young age, and it's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you so much. And the cool thing is, it's my birthday next week, so I'm getting older as we go through the summit, and it's great. Um,
What a great gift to yourself to put this out into the world.
yeah, right? And I turned 26 on the 26th, so I don't know, but there's got to be some magic behind that.
I think so. I love that. Congratulations and happy early birthday.
Thank you. So I'm excited to be here with you because, and this is something I told you before we jumped on the call, was almost exactly a year to the date was when I really kind of stepped into my own and started to take over my life. And part of that, and one of the decisions I had made was I had essentially said goodbye to a 2-year long relationship. And it had been a relatively serious relationship. And part of my exploration and my journey over the last year has been almost redefining or refiguring out, like, who am I as a person? Because
Yes.
you kind of lose a little bit of your identity and who you were with that person. And it's been such a crazy journey just to look back over the last year. But I'd love to hear a little bit about what you have to say as far as, redefining this identity that we have.
Yeah, I find especially in our teens and 20s, because we haven't had a lot of relationships yet, relationships mean so much in terms of they define who we are. I think as you get older, hopefully, and this doesn't happen to everybody, but as you become more comfortable with yourself, you pretty much have a great identity and then you're just merging with somebody. But in your teens and 20s and even your 30s, a lot of times our identity gets so wrapped up in a relationship. So kudos to you for getting really clear that, you know what, this is the journey I want to go on, and maybe this isn't the person to go on this journey with me. I'm a huge fan of year anniversaries. Literally, I left my job at Mattel, my one steady, stable job. I branded Barbie for a living, and then I was like, I'm going to go create my own brand and books and all this stuff. And August 6th of 2004, I walked away from my job and I happened to be going through a workplace breakup. So I went cold turkey. I'd been doing the whole getting back together thing that wasn't working out very well, which is why I wrote my book, It's a Breakup, Not a Breakdown. But literally a year to the day of walking away from the job and the man, I met my husband. So I'm a big fan of like really honoring and marking those clear decisions we make about changing our life, and then the gifts that come through. And sometimes it takes longer than a year, but I love to really see what happens in that year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it goes to show that for the people who are impatient or expecting something to happen overnight or, some miracle to come through, I mean, ultimately you will get what you were looking for. It's a matter of patience, and maybe you should start marking down the dates when things happen and see what happened exactly 12 months later just to see what was there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. So part of that is intuitive. Part of that is like trusting that voice inside that says, this is the direction I'm going to go. And so for you at such a young age, I think it's amazing to have learned how to trust that voice. Because a lot of times I think we hear that voice, but we kind of stuff it and push it aside because it's scary and we don't know what it means yet. So I love that you got really clear and you're like, all right, I'm going to listen to this and I'm going to honor it.
And so it's so funny that you bring this up, and I have to tell this story because, almost exactly a year ago to the date, maybe plus or minus like 3 days, I was hiking up a mountain in the Berkshires in Boston.
Oh,
And with a spiritual retreat with a group, 25 or so people. And whoever I was talking to at that point in time, I turned to them and mid-conversation, I was just like, I have to go to California. And she's just like, okay, go. What? Like, what are you talking about?
Godspeed.
And it was like, it was kind of that big epiphany of like, what is the one thing that you need to do right now? And it just like came to me. And I think it's absolutely hysterical that I am leaving in less than 24 hours for California right now, again, a year later. And really
That's
that trip was what set me up for everything. Was I actually had traveled to San Francisco around this time last year, and that set me on this crazy path. So I just had to share that with you because that's crazy to think like it's coming full circle.
That's amazing. And I have a quick story to share as well. My husband is a Francophile, and we were dedicated dual income, no kids. We were dinks. And we've been together 10 years, and our plan was no kids. We're just going to travel. We're going to build our businesses. We're going to have this great lifestyle. And so, because he's a Francophile, even though he's Guatemalan, he loves France, we go to Paris every 2 years, typically for a month. We're very lucky that way. And so, we were in Paris over Christmas a couple years ago, and I had this intense, it was a very intense knowing that my life was about to change. And I'd had those feelings before that this was like, man, this was like to the gut. And I said to my husband, things are going to be 180 degrees different when we get back. And I thought I was really talking about career. And within a month of getting back, we found ourselves full-time parents to our 1-year-old niece. So after being dinks by design, suddenly we were dinks with diapers. And the beauty of that is, some people feel those internal hits of like intuition. And again, we go, oh, that makes no sense. I don't get that. That scares me. And the more you can like just go, okay, I'm on this journey. I'm going to trust it. I don't have to have all the information today. Then you can look back and go, God, you know what? I really am tuned in, and the more tuned in I am, the more my life is just going to kind of flow.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense, but I have to ask like are some there's some people out there that are missing out because they're like not listening to this voice, because I know that if I wasn't there in the moment and like as funny as it sounds, like if I wasn't being ADD and not totally paying attention to what she was saying in that conversation with me, I would have missed that thought of like I need to go to California. So are we ignoring that voice at some point and that's hurting us?
Well, I think we all have that voice, and I think the voice can be scary the first time you hear it because it's your truth and have to and should and duty don't always go together. So, sometimes the truth is quit your job, but you've got a family to raise. So you're like, how can I do that? And so a lot of times it's easier to just say, shh, go over here. We'll worry about you when things are easier or better or whatever. But that day never comes. So I'm a big fan of being vulnerable enough to say, I don't know what this voice is, but I'm going to start listening and I'm going to take notes and I'm going to see, and it might be incremental. It might be 1 degree at a time. You start listening and tuning in and making shifts. The first time I really connected to the voice, I was in my 20s. I was probably about your age. And I did Artist Way for the first time, Julia Cameron's Artist Way. And it's a 12-week journey of you really getting in touch with your artist. And I remember the moment, it was probably around week 10 of this 12-week journey, where my artist, I had never been like, hey, artist, what's up? That had never occurred to me, but I was making the connection that my artist was a part of me. And my artist wanted to go into this creative cave. That's all I could think of because it was dark and I didn't have a flashlight. And the artist was, I got it, let's go. But I was like, I don't have it, I'm scared. And from that place of sucking it up and saying, without a flashlight, I'm gonna hold my artist's hand and we're gonna walk into this cave, that was where my first book idea came from. Had I not been willing to go in that cave or explore that idea, I would have stayed on the outside and I would have been creatively fulfilled on some level, but I also would have known that I wasn't taking the bigger risks that my artist wanted me to take. And at the time, it really didn't make sense. Why did I want to be this breakup expert? It didn't make sense for who I was at the time. And it's been such an incredible journey, so I'm so glad I went on it.
And a lot of this tends to lead to really like starting this journey of living life on your own terms and the life that you've dreamt of, right?
Yeah. And
So
it can be those baby steps. You don't have to do it all today. It will happen over time.
Right. So for me, like, it was more of just, I didn't even know why. Like, I just knew I have to go to California and something's going to click in place there and we'll just figure it out. And I think the hardest part was really just trusting that voice, as crazy as it sounded. Because, if somebody kind of popped up in your room tomorrow and just said, hey, we got to fly to Japan, you're going to be
Yeah,
like, why?
yeah.
you know?
That makes no sense. Why would we do that? And that's what a lot of people around you will say. Why are you doing that?
So
And
yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say that brings up a good point too. Is like, who are we surrounding ourselves with, and are they preventing us from, living out our fullest potential?
Yeah, you will find people on your journey who will meet you where you're at, and that can be a good thing and a bad thing. So there will be people who really liked your life the way it was before you started tuning in and getting ideas about how you wanted to be more you. And then there will be people who are on their path of being themselves, and maybe they're really farther, so much farther ahead than you. And they'll be the ones who are like, come on, you can do it. So I think it's so important to really look at who you're surrounding yourself with and look at the stories you're all telling each other about what's possible. And if they're all saying, oh, that's for other people, you can't do that, are you crazy? You might need to think about expanding that circle to include some people who go, yeah, I see that for you and I'm here to support you. What do you need?
And I think you said it very well there. Expanding your circle, not just breaking up with all of your friends and saying
Yeah.
peace out.
Yeah, and some people will break up with you. I've had a couple people break up with me, and it was incredibly painful. There was one person in particular who changed my life at a very important time in my life. When I quit my job at Mattel, I lived on his living room floor for a summer. He was one of my best friends. And as I started to really expand into the fullness of who I was supposed to be, he didn't like it. It made him uncomfortable because it was a mirror for him about what he wasn't doing. And so he really let me have it and told me what he thought of me. And he had that pattern with other friends in his life who always said, that's okay, that's just him. And I thought, I don't let people treat me like that. So I have to let this person go and maybe he'll come back. If he comes back, it will be because he has understood that he can't do that to me. And he never did come back. And that was I mourned that friendship for a long time.
Yeah, and I could definitely see how that hurts you because,
Yeah.
we love holding on to the people in our lives.
Yeah.
That's something that makes us feel safe and comforted and, excited.
Community is a huge core value of mine. So to let a valued member of my community go is, it's why I wrote books about breakups because I wasn't very good at them because letting go is really tough for me.
So what are like some other parts of letting go if you do choose to, let people kind of fade out of your life that are no longer serving you?
Yeah. I think the number one thing is to cultivate a practice of tuning in, whatever that looks like for you, because that's going to keep you centered regardless of what chaos is being thrown at you when people are coming or going or naysaying or beating you up. And it's not that people are mean, some people are, but it's more when you decide to evolve, not everybody's going to be on board. So cultivating, whether it's meditation or journaling or exercise or getting a therapist or a coach, but having some kind of, and really before you get a therapist or a coach, I feel like it starts within, like creating some kind of inner strength process. And I used to not be very woo woo. I realize I must be pretty woo woo now because I talk about meditation and I talk about all these things that I'm like, oh, they actually do help me stay centered. So cultivating a practice where you are solid with yourself, that's essential. And then the next thing is you've got to get at least one or two, if not a whole circle of people who really can hold space because it's a big space. It's a shift you're making to go from what was to what you want to become. So to have some form of a community that can celebrate that and be with you in that, that's really important too. And then I think, I'm a big fan of, and here I go being woo-woo again, but I'm a big fan of like forgiveness work. Like, who do I need to forgive or what do I need to forgive in myself? Like, I think the biggest stumbling block to being our true self is our own fears about what's possible and our own beliefs we've told ourselves based on childhood, parents, whatever. And so really getting clear about that stuff and clearing out that clutter that's holding you back. I come from a family of people who got paid every 2 weeks for life, and my parents are retired, but they're teachers. So they have, like these are people who were like, I'm going to work until I retire and then I'm going to have a pension, So what I do is very different. So I needed to find people who could see that and not go, that's really strange.
Yeah, and I'm sure for people listening into this, they're probably like, well, how do I find them? And I know for me, one of the things I did, and this was something that I thought was relatively creative, was I made the group. I couldn't find the group and I made it. So,
Yes.
I've created meetup.com groups. I've created, online Facebook communities. For my video production business, I was trying to figure out how to create a group of videographers. And I literally just made a Facebook group and I added like 6 of my friends to it. And here we are, about a year later, there's about 250 in there.
Wow. That's amazing. I find for me, and I'm very lucky, I live in Los Angeles, so there's a lot of seekers, creative thinkers out here. And over the years, I used to do a lot of business networking, and then I got clear that that didn't make me so happy anymore. So now I'm really about being happy in my life, and I find that I have cultivated an amazing circle of women. My husband's amazing, and he's an entrepreneur too, but I think specifically of the women in my life right now, and I'm like, I remember being in my 20s and relationships with women were a struggle because there was competition, and you're trying to keep up with each other. And now I feel like I'm in my 40s and women are amazing in our 40s. So I so appreciate that I've cultivated some great female friendships that are based on really just genuinely wanting the best for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to have, that support group that you can go to at any point in time and know that it's not just like the high school friends that you grew up with that, haven't kind of grown with you, being able to
Yeah.
have this group that knows where you're at now and accepts you for where you are right now is really crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've got to ask because you brought up something interesting earlier. It sounds like you had a bit of a curveball thrown into, I don't know if you necessarily had a plan, but you did bring on at one point a little one that you had to start taking care of. And I can imagine that, we're on this path, we're driving, and all of a sudden
We got
there's,
it covered. We are so good.
yeah, and then there's a block in the road.
Yeah.
So how does that play out and what happened in your life when that happened?
I think and this goes for everyone who has these curveballs, whether the curveball is a breakup, a divorce, a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, a child unexpectedly. You really have a choice in every moment to show up and evolve based on your current situation or to show up and resist. And because I was this dink by design, I had my life figured out. We had money, we had sex, we traveled, like I was a little cocky in my belief about my life. I was a little like, I got it. I got it. And the universe knew better. So, instantly, my sister-in-law, who's much younger than my husband, her and her baby daddy got arrested. Their daughter, who was a year at the time, went in foster care, our niece. And even though I didn't want a child, the thought that this child was in foster care was so unacceptable to me. I'd actually, when I found out my sister-in-law was pregnant, she was only 18, and I said to my husband, we're going to raise this baby. But I thought that meant we were going to raise my sister and she was going to raise her baby. Like I had this intuition. And it was kind of surprising when she went off and lived her life with her kid. And I'm like, okay, I guess I was wrong. So when this actually happened, part of me was like, oh, but the other part was like, what the fuck? Like I did not sign up for this. And you know, parenting is the hardest job you'll ever have. You don't get weekends off. If you're sick, nobody cares. Like, it's an insane adjustment. And I am very humbled to say that my husband instantly adjusted. And it took me, we had my niece for 10 months, and it took me about 5 months. I was really in a space of, it was all ego and fear. It was like, if I let down my guard, everything's going to fall apart. I'm going to fall in, like, I didn't know this at the time, but I think part of the fear was I'm going to fall in love with this baby that's not mine. I'm going to hurt my sister-in-law. But beyond that, it was really, how am I going to keep my business going? How am I going to pay for everybody? Because suddenly I had a nanny to pay for and a daycare to pay for, and my husband was trying to save money to take a year off. So I was in charge of suddenly all these people, and I hadn't planned for that, and I didn't like that. So I had a real crisis of faith and conscience. And it wasn't until I really saw how my husband was thriving as a father and how my niece loved him. I mean, it was beautiful to watch them. It's still beautiful. I just remember very clearly one day seeing them together and going, I'm not having that experience, and that's my doing. And I could keep this up, but what would be the point? The point was for me to change, and I'm resisting the change. So I talked to my husband. I said, I need you to help me. And he really taught me how to be more open. And within 24 hours, my niece changed how she behaved towards me. She started like coming, asking for me. She'd never done that before. Now she's 4. She and her mom are like my kids. We have them on weekends. And it is the most, I posted this on Facebook yesterday. I am so blessed. I didn't know there was love like this. It is extraordinary. And I'm so thankful that I surrendered because I was in the way.
And I think that we all can get in our own ways, from time to time, because, we just put up this barrier or this blockade and we can't see past it. And sometimes if we just kind of step out of our own equation, just even temporarily, you can really see what's on the other side of it. And what's on the other side is usually something you actually want. So it's not even like a real scary thing.
It is. And that goes back to the breakup thing. I talk to so many men and women, and the fear is of, typically fear after a breakup is they're going to go off and like my ex is going to go have an amazing life and I'm going to be stuck here. That's one of the big things. And then the other big piece is I'm never going to meet anybody else, so I might as well stick. I might as well stay. And I always say, you're missing the point. What's next for you? Like, it doesn't matter what's next for them. Yes, of course, our ego plays that game and our heart hurts. But the exciting thing is that there's something next for you. And the more you can focus on that and be living your life and letting go of what was and going, what is? I'm excited to find out. Everything in life is about surrender. Like all of those rock bottom or choosing to evolve moments, it's a choice. You can say, I choose to resist or I choose to surrender. And I've learned to cut down on my resistance time.
I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, I've had way more moments lately, just in the last maybe 6 months, where, kind of with this newfound sense of awareness, having a point in time where I take a step back and I'm like, you know what? This is the point where I could give up. I could walk away right here, right now, and no hard feelings. But I'd be missing out on, what's just over the curve or around the bend. And I think being able to listen to that voice, being able to recognize the moments in your life where you can create that transformation are just so... It's amazing. It's almost miraculous in a sense, because being able to sense this and feel it coming, or to be able to step back and see what's right in front of you, is really a tool that most people don't have anymore.
I'm very thankful for that tool, and I'm humbled by the fact that it's a nonstop journey. Like I am very happy to say I am a constant work in progress. I have learned, especially with my niece and that experience, my ego thought I had everything figured out in my life. And the truth was, I was living very much on the surface. There was nothing wrong with my life, but my husband and I didn't have to have difficult conversations because our life was very easy. And it wasn't until we started having those difficult conversations that our relationship deepened. So I'm very humbled to say that I have no idea what's next, and I'm okay with that.
That's a good thing. I mean, I think that, accepting that there's some things that are beyond our control is probably one of the best ways to go. A lot of this is kind of centered around the people that we, allow into our life or let out of our life. Do you have any advice just as far as, what we can do ourselves to make sure that we are having the best possible relationships with these people that we do choose to keep or to bring into our life?
Yeah, I say to anyone who will listen that I married someone who's a far better human being than I am. And I think that's a good thing because my husband inspires me to show up better. And he would say the same thing. So it's not like I'm putting him on some crazy pedestal. So I think in your relationships, look for people who inspire you to be your best. We all have been in that relationship with someone who didn't inspire us to be our best, and it was difficult and it was frustrating and it was challenging and it was mediocre, and sometimes it was just downright confrontational, and that's not who we're here to be. So I like to say I have created a life for myself where I'm drama adjacent. Like, of course there's drama in the world. I don't live in it. And I don't choose to surround myself with people who create it. So when they do create it, I just kind of, okay, you go over here. And it's really about being around people who subscribe to that same philosophy of, I want to be my best self and I want the people around me to feel like they can be their best.
Yeah, and I know that I feel the most at home when I am that, serious and professional, but like goofball underneath it all sort of person. And so, like, I think that it makes perfect sense when you find that group or when you find that person. I mean, you feel it, you act that way around them, and that's how you know that there's such a good fit.
Yes.
And I think, just being aware of that in itself is probably one of the best decisions you can make when bringing someone in or out of your life.
I like that. Well said.
So this has been a really cool conversation. I know that you've got a couple of books out right now and you've got some great resources online. What is the best way to keep in touch with you and keep track of the things going on with you?
I am, and I say this to everyone, be very easy to find because when people like what you have to say and offer, we want to create community. So I'm very easy to find. My website is lisastedman.com. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, all of those under Lisa Steadman. So just at Lisa Steadman. And anyone who's watching this or listening to this and feeling called to connect, I welcome that.
Very cool. And I know you had a resource that you wanted to share with everyone who is listening in today. If you could tell everyone what that is.
Yeah, I started talking to a lot of people about this idea of turning your life on, and really getting on fire and on purpose in your life. So I have a free gift. It's an audio program, 20 Days and 20 Ways to Turn Your Life On, and you can find that at lisastedman.com/free gift/.
Awesome. So, and it's Lisa Steadman, Steadman, just for everybody listening or watching in. Want to make sure we get that spelling right and that you don't miss out on that awesome gift. Lisa, it's been great speaking with you today, and I'm actually hopping on a plane tomorrow to head out to your side of the country, and it's been great chatting with you, and I can't wait to keep in touch over the next few months and share with you the journey that's happening for me and see where it's going for you too.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and have an amazing trip and just enjoy.